Welcome to Simply Vegan and Wellness in Memphis. Today we're going to be making a tea ring, which is a really festive kind of coffee cake that you can serve at social functions. It's a little labor intensive, so it's not something you'll probably be making often, but the techniques that are used here, especially in making the whole wheat dough, are really valuable. So let's get started. First thing is you want to make sure that your yeast is active. Now I'm going to be using an instant yeast, and so you don't really need to proof it, but if you're not sure if your yeast is good, if it's been sitting in the refrigerator for a while, go ahead and put it in some water with a little bit of sugar in it and let it foam. And if it does not foam, you know that your yeast is not active. It should take about 5 to 10 minutes for you to get a nice layer of foam there from the yeast being activated. So, when you know that your yeast is good, you're ready to go. Before we start on our yeast for this particular recipe, we also want to make the filling. Traditional sweet rolls will have sugar and cinnamon in them, but we're going to use something a little bit healthier than that. This is a date and dried apricot paste. I just used dried apricots and dates, some water, and simmered that till everything was soft, and then added some vanilla and lemon juice and a pinch of salt, and I'll put the recipe up for that as well. Once that cooled off a little bit, I blended that in the blender to a smooth paste, and we want to make this ahead of time so that it has a chance to cool off, so that when you roll it on your dough, it's not too hot to work with. So that is made ahead of time before we work on the dough. So now for our dough, I'm going to put all the dry ingredients into my bowl to begin with. So we're going to start today with 3 cups of whole wheat flour. This is a ½ cup measure, so I'm going to do 6 of these. And this is a regular whole wheat flour that I picked up at the grocery store. So there's 4, 5, and 6. The recipe calls for about 3 to 5, so I'm just going to start with 3 here and we'll add as we need. Then I will go ahead and add the other dry ingredients to this. So we have 1/4 cup of gluten flour, which helps this whole wheat to have some springiness to it and hold together really well. And then I have a soy milk powder, which is just soybeans that have been cooked and then dried and ground. If you don't have a soy milk powder, you could also use a soy milk instead of using water in the recipe that we'll be using a little later. I'm going to add a little sugar. We need this to feed the yeast so that we get a nice rise. And then I have our instant yeast here, again, which does not need to be proofed. The instant yeast works quite well, even just mixing it in like this. So I'm going to go ahead and stir these all together nicely before I add my liquid ingredients, just to get that mixed up well, especially the gluten flour, because the gluten flour can be very, very rubbery, sticky consistency. So once it's mixed in with this whole wheat flour, it works a lot nicer. Now on your whole wheat flours, there is also a flour called a white wheat, and it's still 100% wheat. It's just that the wheat berry itself is a white color as compared to the red color that a lot of the whole wheats are. So just make sure that your package of flour says 100% whole wheat flour. So here we have our mix, and now I'm going to be adding some water, and we want that nice and warm to the touch. We're going to add 2½ cups. So let me just pour this into my measuring cup over here and get down to eye level when you're checking out your measurement on your water. I'm going to pour that in, and then I have a small amount of sunflower oil here. I like to use the sunflower oil because it's non-GMO. All right. So we're going to quickly stir this up. I don't expect this to be perfect. It's going to be a little wetter than we really want it to be, but you don't want to add all your flour at once because there's a lot of variables when you're cooking with whole wheat flour, especially making yeast breads. The humidity in the air, how compact your flours were when you measured them, all will make a great difference. So we start a little on the shy side, and we'll mix this together, and you can see this is still very wet, very sticky, much too soft and sticky to handle right now. So I'm going to just start adding more flour to it, and you know, the more experienced you are, the more you're going to know about how much you need to add. But I'm going to measure this amount out for now and just add it about a quarter of a cup at a time for the consistency that I'm at right now. And we are not going to be kneading this dough very much. We're going to do a rise method instead of the kneading method, but you are going to have to do some mixing and a little kneading to get it to just the right consistency. So you can see here, this is still much too wet. I'm going to go ahead and add another quarter of a cup there of the flour and keep incorporating that. And you need a good arm and you need a good sturdy stirring spoon or spatula or something like that. You can see it's starting to come together, kind of balling together, but still too soft. So let me get some more flour here. Now I'm going to start going a little more sparingly as we add this in, because we do not want our dough to be too heavy or too dry. And as soon as it's ready to be worked with the hands, I'm going to go ahead and do that because it will work a lot better to knead it with that. Now you can certainly do this with a bread machine if you have a bread machine, but if you enjoy working with your hands and doing the dough this way, I want to at least give people the option for that. And a lot of people don't have a bread machine. So with a good sturdy spoon and good strong hands and clean hands, you can easily make this a very lovely dough, even without all the fancy equipment. All right, so we are about there, but I can see this is still going to need a little bit once we start incorporating that in there. As you can see, the dough is getting to be very nice here. It's not too sticky. I can tell underneath it's still a little bit too sticky. So we're just going to now go into kneading it a little bit with my hands. Just a light dusting. And if you can avoid getting your fingers all gooeyed up, you're going to do a whole lot better. So handle very gently as you work with your dough. Okay, don't be digging your fingers into it. All right, if you have a bowl with the straight sides, it is going to be harder to work with than a bowl that has edges like this. Give you a little bit more space for actually working. What you want to do is push with the heel of your hand and then pull up with your fingertips. So push down, pull up, do a quarter of a turn. Just keep working it that way. This is just a tad sticky. So we're going to do just a tiny bit more. As you get toward the end, you have to be very careful not to overdo it. Okay, so the dough is nice and soft, has a nice consistency to it. If I put it in my hand, you can kind of see how it droops a little bit. It's not super hard. You can see it separating there, but it's no longer sticky to my hands. And what we want to do is get this surface a little bit oiled so that it can rise. So I'm going to take another bowl here, and I'm going to put just a small amount of oil in it. You can either rub that with your fingers or just take a paper towel and rub all inside of the bowl. And then pick the dough up, put it down into the bowl like that. I'm going to take it out and flip it. And what that does is it puts a very fine layer of oil on the top of the dough so that as the dough is rising, it's not going to dry out. But I am going to cover this lightly with a little bit of plastic wrap. Do not secure the sides down. You're trying to give it room to rise, or if your bowl is larger, my bowl is right on the edge here. But I wanted you to be able to see the difference. So as you can see, about where it is here, I'm going to put this in a warm place to rise for about an hour. Again, gently lay that on so that it can lift it. You may even want to check it halfway through. Make sure it still is not clinging to the bowl and holding your dough from rising. Put this in a warm place. I have found that if the temperature in the room is 75 degrees to 85 degrees, it's usually pretty good. If your home is cool, You could turn your oven on just for maybe 5 seconds, shut it off, put it in the oven, or you could put it in a cold oven and just put a half a pot of very warm water in the oven with it and shut the door. So we're going to let this rise for 1 hour, and then we will be back to make our tea ring. So here we are. It hasn't been quite an hour, but I've been keeping an eye on this, and all of the conditions were perfect for this dough, and so it expanded quite well. I do want to mention that I forgot to put the salt in, which is one of the good things about pre-measuring all your ingredients. As I went to put the dough into the oven, I realized the salt was still sitting here on the counter. So I just spread the dough out a little bit, sprinkled the salt over it, and then kneaded it a little bit to incorporate it into the dough, and everything is just great. So let's take a look at this dough, and you can see that it has expanded quite a bit from when it went into the oven. So the dough is beautifully risen. Actually, I'm just going to do what they call punching it down, but I want to spray my wrist just in case it's a little bit sticky here. So we're just going to punch it down. If you ever hear it called punch down, that's what punching the dough down is. So you're just knocking all that air out of the dough. Now before we work with this, I would like to not have so much cleanup on my countertop. So I'm just going to take a damp paper towel, and I'm going to just dampen the countertop just a little bit here. And then I will put plastic wrap on the countertop, and that dampening will go ahead and make this plastic wrap stick really well to my countertop. You do not have to do this. It's just a little tip for keeping your countertops a little cleaner, if that's what you'd like to do. If you don't mind scrubbing your countertop afterward, that's good too. All right, so I've got my plastic wrap on here. We're going to be rolling this to be about 28 by 10 inches. So let me just measure. I'm going to have to lay one more piece of plastic wrap down just to make sure. And that's what you're going to want to do. You're going to want to measure this. There we go. And I'll put one more down so that we will be able to make this the full size that we need it. Okay, so there's our countertop, all nice and ready to be kept clean. I'm going to sprinkle just a little bit of flour onto my surface so that when we go to roll this, it will not stick. And we're going to check it periodically anyway. Now, with this dough, you could at this point roll it up, put it down on your floured board, gently knead it just for a second, shape it into a loaf, and put it in a bread pan or two, depending on the size of your bread pans. And you want it to be just a little below the edge of your bread pan. And then you want it to rise so that it's gently peaking. So it's about doubling in size before it goes into the oven. But we're not going to be making a loaf of bread with this, but this is very, very nice. You can see how the gluten has developed. It's a little bit stretchy, like this. That is the gluten that has developed that will help the bread to be light and soft in texture. Oh, there's my oven ready, preheated to put this in. There it is. And I may have more dough here than I need. This is the first time I'm making this using 100% whole wheat. I usually use my Dick's Biscuits recipe. So if we have a little extra dough, well then maybe we'll do something else with it. But you can see the texture is absolutely perfect. And I'm going to just put a little light dusting of flour on here before I roll. If it starts to stick, then we're going to add more. I'm going to make this about 28 inches long. My pan that I'm going to be putting this tea ring on is about a 12-inch pizza pan. You could do it on a cookie sheet. You could make it on a larger pan and make a larger tea ring if you'd like. We'll just do this into a large rectangle. just like this. And I do like to do it a little bit further than what I want because I'm going to slice that off so that we have a nice clean measurement here and not a rounded rectangle on the corners. Okay. Wow, this dough is really, really, really nice. Let me do a quick measure on it. So we've got about 27 inches by about 11, and I was aiming for 28 by 10, so we're doing okay. This is not rocket scientist here. Now, what we're going to do is go ahead and spread our date paste in here, and again, this is a date apricot with a little bit of vanilla, and a little bit of lemon, and a little bit of salt, and that'll all be in the recipe. This is probably too big even to be in the full range of the camera, but maybe we can move that camera just a little as we go. We're just going to spread this evenly, leaving about a half an inch all the way around the edges. You do not want to go all the way to the edge with this. Oh, it smells wonderful. Delightfully sweet. And the dates are naturally sweet with plenty of fiber, so that's better for the glycemic index. Dates actually have a relatively low glycemic index number for the sweetness that they taste. And the glycemic load number is also very good. So let's see what we've got here. Ooh, this is such a wonderful treat. Now, we're going to be making this into a tea ring, but this could also be made into sweet rolls. And this recipe freezes very well. So if you wanted to make sweet rolls ahead, to have them for a special treat, like on Sabbath morning, or for some function that's coming up, you can make them ahead and put them in your freezer. So we have this spread pretty evenly. And then you can put any additional ingredients on here that you want, maybe some macaroon-style coconut or some chopped nuts. And I decided today I would go ahead and use some finely chopped walnuts. We really like walnuts a lot because of the omega-3 qualities of the fat in the walnuts, which can also be found in flaxseed, which is really beneficial for your brain. So we like to have that, and that's a nice thing to have in the winter when the sun is not shining as much and we're just not getting as much light, and we tend to get some winter depression there. So the walnuts are wonderful. Now for the good part. We are going to just gently from this edge, start rolling it up. And you want to work quickly. And you want to work gently, so just with the edges of your hands, just bringing this up. If it sticks at all, just slowly work with it. Sometimes that happens. It may get a little sticking at times. Now, if you are wanting to turn this into sweet rolls, I want to show you a neat little trick for doing that. Let me get that date off of there. I don't want that date paste on that right there. Is just to use some dental floss, and we're going to slide. If we can move the camera down to the end, can you see over here? If you were making this into sweet rolls, you just slide your floss underneath your dough, then cross it over, pull it tightly, and it makes a beautiful clean cut. And then you would just stand these all up in the pan loosely together. Don't tight pack them, give them room to expand. But there's how you would make your sweet rolls. Now, we're not making sweet rolls, we're making the tea ring. So we are going to go ahead and cut off the other end in the same way with the dental floss. So let me just come down here. Again, cross that over. And I'm just going to put these aside, and I probably will go ahead and put them in a pan and bake them. So I've got a 12-inch pizza pan here, give it a spray. Now here comes the challenging part. We have got to get this onto here without breaking it. So we're going to work carefully to just bring it over onto the pan like this. All right. Oh, it's beautiful, soft dough. Beautiful, beautiful. Now remember, this has yeast in it, so it's going to rise, so we don't want to be right up to the edge. I'm going to bring these two edges together here. Make it as round as you can. And try to kind of shape it so that you get an even thickness all the way around the edge as well. And then I'm just going to gently just pinch that back edge a little bit. All right, so now we have a wreath shape here. Now, if you have some kitchen shears, they pull apart like this. These are wonderful. If you don't, if you have a clean pair of shears that you can wash very well, that should work for doing this. If you use a knife, you're probably going to squish it too much. So scissors actually work best. And we're going to go all the way around the edge, doing a cut about, let's see, about every 3 fingers width. And you want to cut about 3/4 of the way in, all the way around the edge. Try to get it even. If you want to do it a little closer than that, or a little bit, it's hard if you did a little further than that, because we're going to be turning them on their side. But you could actually do them a little closer than that if you wanted. It cuts beautifully. I love the sound of the scissors going through this stuff. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to get 2, I'm going to do 3 more there, or 2 more cuts for 3 more pieces. All right. Now, we're just going to turn these on their side, like so, all the way around. And it looks a little messy right now, because it is a little messy right now. But after this bakes, it's going to be just beautiful. Turn this here. Adjusting as you go. We're going to be glazing this after it comes out, after it cools. We'll be glazing it and icing it a little bit. So some of these imperfections won't show, and also the imperfections are going to rise out as the yeast rises as it bakes a little bit. Okay, just wiping up the side. Just like this. Almost done. Kind of looks like a octopus legs all curling up so beautifully. And then this last one, you want to get on top and underneath. You can always wipe it up just a little bit. Just wipe off some of the excess that maybe came up there. We'll put this in the oven for 30 to 40 minutes. You don't want to overbake it because it'll be too dry. So cook it till it's golden. Cook it till it's just barely golden. Watch it. After about 20 minutes, start watching. If it starts getting too dark, but if it's only been 20 minutes, it is not going to be cooked through. So at that point, you can just lay a piece of aluminum foil or parchment paper over the top of the tea ring to help it so that it doesn't continue to brown. All right, this is going to go in the oven, and we will see you in about 30 or 40 minutes. Now it's out of the oven, and now is the tricky part. We've got to get it off of this pan, and I want to get it onto these racks to cool. So what I'm going to do is just slide it over just a pinch, and pick this up It's hot, so be careful. And we want to gently get it off of the pan onto the cooling rack. I have melted a small amount of apricot jelly in the microwave. You could do it in a pan if you don't have a microwave or don't use a microwave. I'm just loosening this here so that we can get it off of this pan in one piece. And the reason why I'm doing this right now is because I want to paint the glaze on. Real life here, you can see some of the challenges you might face. Okay, so we've got that there. Now I have this apricot jam that I've melted, and this is going to give it just a little bit of a glaze look. Because we don't brush it with egg whites, which would be the traditional glaze, if you want it to have a gloss on it, you're going to need to do something else. So I found that using an apricot jam, we can kind of give it that glossy look. And it does add a small amount of sweetness to this, but not really very much, because we're just going to put a thin layer on here. Then we're going to need to allow this to cool before we do any final decorating. I will use a small amount of confectionery sugar and lemon juice to decorate the top of this. If that is something that you do not want to do, you could leave it just like this. You could put some dried cranberries on top of this, or some chopped nuts, chopped walnuts or roasted pecans, oven roasted pecans. Oh, there's my New England accent here. I guess in the South we call it a pecan. So you can put some oven roasted pecans on top, chopped up. And then, if you wanted it in the middle, if your middle was big enough, you might be able to put some of your little ends that were baked in the oven. I could probably put one off and put that in there, but I'm just going to leave it just like this. I'm going to let this cool on the rack, and then we'll come back and we'll decorate it with our icing. We are ready to decorate. Okay, so you can do any designs that you like. I think I'm just going to go ahead and put a nice swivel edge all around the top here. And I think we'll add a few craisins just for some color. Let's see, where would we want to put these? Maybe just in between the dots. There we have it. A beautiful tea ring that you can share with your friends and families. God bless you. I hope that you'll have a lovely holiday season.